Good evening, everybody, on this brand new day of, brand new day of a brand new week. I hope everybody had a good Monday, truly. Hope everybody enjoyed it. And back to where I was. Hello, everybody. Spirit of 420 here because everything I do is just so incredibly 420. So, where to start tonight? Where to start? Obviously, you can kind of get an idea of what I'm thinking about, and what I mean by that is prejudice and judging and that kind of thing. I, am somebody that it really it hurts me to my soul. However, as you learn to love yourself, what hurts me is that people do it. It doesn't hurt me per se when somebody necessarily judges me anymore. I've learned to get past that. If I know them and they're a friend or a relative or somebody that I talk to, then I'll have a debate, in a nice way. If it's close family, might be an argument. Let's just be real, right? If somebody in the family, sons, wife, mother, father, whatever, judges me, then there might be a little bit of back and forth. That's just the way it is, right? No worries, brother. Much love to you too, bro. So, we in my humble opinion, I find it to be the closer that people are, the more that the judging actually hurts, if it hurts at all. So, because like I say, if somebody that doesn't even know me lays judgment on me, hey, fuck them. I really don't care. They don't know me and they don't understand who I am or what I've done or where I've come from, right? But somebody who's extremely close and let's say, knows my story, understands where I've come from. Well, when they lay judgment, you tend to um, you tend to allow it to hurt, even if you do love yourself, because it's somebody who, let's face it, if they're close like that, you care about them, they care about you. So when somebody says that to you, A, it hurts. And B, what I have found is I have to actually look at it because generally speaking, and I am saying generally, but generally speaking, when somebody's judging you and it hurts, it's because they're saying, they're usually pointing something out in you that they do not like. And the sad thing is, yes, it hurts and it is judgment, but if it's coming from somebody who loves you, you might have to listen to it. You might have to take it and go, okay, is there truth to this? And I'll just give a quick, for instance. I have a good friend who has become rather close over the last, what did I mean? I guess it was close to, I guess it's been a year now. I have to look and see when the first text was. But either way, we've become good friends. And we would sit and have many conversations, even heated debates would get heated, if you will, uh, in reference to, and not to sound rude, but in reference to his shortcomings, because he was dealing with a lot, and the difference is, because I wasn't judging him at this point, I want to make that clear, but it's still a good example, because he asked me for help. That's why it wasn't judging. Then I'm guiding. And, if you ask somebody for their help, then you want their help specifically. And that's what he wants. So, needless to say, and the way it got there is on I think the first time that we actually got a debate, I was like, may I, and I asked him, I didn't just come out and say, I was like, may I tell you how I feel about what you just said and what is going on. So I also got his permission, to go, hey, I believe that you're doing this, this, and this. And funny enough, one of the things that he was doing was judging, a lot of us are judgmental. It's a easy I don't like to call it a shortcoming. I now prefer to call all these things gifts. They are gifts, right? What's up, Brandon? How you doing, man? Um, so in the beginning, I would call them shortcomings, but now again, I call them gifts. So if somebody is judgmental, then they can turn that into a gift, right? I am incredibly judgmental, came from a judgmental family. That said, I can't stand people laying judgment at this age where I am. But when I was younger, my grandmother would take me to the mall and um, we would sit and people watch, and she would just, I mean, I can't deny I learned a lot of it, but she would just shred people just based on them walking by and whatever happened in that time, that short span of time. She would like tell you their life story, and it was never good. That's the thing. She never looked at somebody like, that's a real, well, I shouldn't say that. There was a couple times, I take that back, giving my grandmother credit. There was a couple times where she did say, that looks like a pristine person, but that was few and far between because she wasn't there to find the good ones. She was there to point out the bad ones. And even when she saw good ones many times, or what she thought was good, if you will, and I'll come back to that. That's a good point. And what she thought was good, right? She wouldn't really say anything about it and just kind of let it go. Generally speaking, that was because there was somebody else that she was putting down that she's talking about. Good and bad. Just real quick, I want to take a side note, and I'll come back. We're on judgment. I get it. Sidebar. I no longer believe, and I have been trying to instill this into my younger children as well as my older child. But the younger ones, who are 9 and 12, if they learn this now, then if they truly learn the concept of it, but it's hard to teach a kid. And here's why. You want them to know a difference between something that is morally right and morally wrong, right? You want them to have a solid moral compass that says where they need and what they need to do. Of course, that moral compass is based on your moral compass and your wife or whomever else is raising them. And if you try to teach them too young that there is no true good or bad, and I will finish that thought here in a second, it can ruin what you're trying to do. So you have to make sure that their moral compass is pretty much instilled in them as to what is right, wrong, which kind of goes in line with if you will, just to give you an example, I don't care if you're religious, spiritual, atheist, I don't care what you are. You have, if you will, your own list of commandments, rules, things that you shall do and that you shall not do, right? Even though you have those, right, and that's what you teach to your child, and once they truly know that, then you can do this. But even though you have those, the one thing to think about is someone else's moral code and moral compass may be strong morals, but highly conflicts with yours. And that's what I mean. Does that make theirs right and yours wrong? Does that make yours right and theirs wrong? No. And here's what I mean by there truly is no good or bad. If you have come to the realization, and I know that not everybody has, but if you've come to the realization that everything truly happens for a reason, right? Then what might have been considered a negative or bad, quote unquote bad, or even may even have broken your moral compass, right? The reality is, so let me just back up. If you believe everything happens for a reason, then you realize when something bad happens, it's going to be followed by something good. The balance will engage, and it will take care of you. And I don't care how you believe in that, whether it's God, karma, or whatever. If you have lived life long enough, then you should have come to the realization that some of the greatest things, in fact, all of the greatest things that have ever happened to you, including your birth, actually stem from something negative, because they constantly are correcting one another and the balance goes back and forth. It's forever, you know. I think the easiest way to think about this, quite frankly, with most people is most people are scientific at this point, and they have a certain amount of science, I should say, and they understand that we are made of atoms. Well, what is each atom but literally one negative, one negative proton, one negative neutron, one positive proton, and they're circling a nucleus forever at the same distance. They will never get, they're half and half. They will get no closer and no further away. If they do, you're probably looking all kinds of messed up. It's not good. Now, having said that, to me, that's where I wish I had a sticker right now, but that's where yin and yang. I think it's funny how much yin and yang, the yin yang, represents life on so many levels, not just that, what goes around comes around, right? That's the basis that everybody knows from it. But the reality is it's almost a perfect representation of our core energy. Once you get to the lowest, or the smallest part of us, right? To the very core, what are we made up of? The material, it's atoms, right? So it is no coincidence, in my opinion, that a yin yang literally looks like, if you could kind of take a split second, but drag your oh God, what's it called? Cause your lens to stay open a little bit longer, so just slightly. That's what you would get if you took a picture of an atom, right? Or and I guess actually it would be if you slow down an atom and take a picture, but you get my drift. That's I do not, again, I don't believe in coincidences. Oh my God. I have to answer this because it's a rare call. I'm sorry. Is this about taking you, or is this an emergency? I'll have to talk to you later. I'm actually live streaming. Love you, buddy. Bye. My apologies for that. I know it's kind of funny to see that in the show, but when any of my children, even the ones that are not my blood, call, if they call, then there's a chance, let's just say there's a pretty good chance usually that there is something wrong, and it's also a pretty decent chance that it might be an emergency. So I did not want to leave him hanging. That was one of my, I guess you could say, like a surrogate, if you will. He's one of my adopted kids. So back to where was I? Oh, yin yang. I don't believe in coincidences, and I find it absolutely not a coincidence of how much the yin yang represents life. And it comes back to the balance, and that's what I was saying. Here's another reason why I don't believe in good and bad in the traditional sense of what we're taught. However, back to that, you have to teach it so they know it as right and wrong, and then you kind of have to, in lack of a better term, tear it down. If you try to teach that while they're growing up and be like, this isn't bad, it doesn't matter. Okay. And that's not the case. But here's my point. When anybody is doing something, with the exception of maybe stealing, raping, killing, there's a few exceptions. Okay. But I'm talking about daily life and how they live it. Most people do not consider themselves to be an evil piece of shit or a negative person, right? I'm sure there's a couple. Anytime you say anything anytime say anything, Murphy's Law kicks in. So back to what I was saying. Nobody really looks at themselves and goes, like, I mean, here, the best example I can give, it's the biggest one off the top of my head, but Hitler thought everything that he was doing was truly righteous. Right? And that doesn't mean that he was right, folks. I disagree highly with a lot of, some of the things he said, I agree with, but I can literally say that everybody in this world will say something that I agree with, right? As a moral, dude, he was, in my opinion, totally out of whack and has a lot of problems, and in fact was very judgmental, right? But in his eyes, to him, what he was doing was right. Even to some of the sickest fucks you've ever read about or learned about or know about, they thought they were doing it. Like even some of the killers, right, believe they're doing it for all the right, quote unquote, reasons. So that's one reason there really is no good or bad. And the other reason is if you believe in everything happening for a reason, then those things that are bad needed to happen for this other thing, including things like mistakes. What's the other one I was just thinking of? I don't believe in mistakes. So, and that's why if the mistake happened, then it led you on to something else. Right? Did anybody hear? Oh my God, my kid's in there growling. He's been doing this like, and I know that it's nothing to worry about, but he's been doing this almost. He heard it on one of his YouTubes, and it's like this, he honestly sounds like he could be trying out for like Vore, or one of those speed death metal bands. That voice. So I will be the first one, coming back full circle, I'll be the first one to admit that I am prejudiced, but I no longer, or not prejudiced, excuse me, that I am judgmental, but I no longer look at it as a defect because I'm aware of the behavior. So once you're aware of the behavior, you can use the behavior to benefit yourself or benefit others, right? And back to my friend, to bring it completely back full circle, we had a discussion. I asked permission. I said a few things. And after he spent like, I think it was like it was probably about 5 months into our relationship. And we ended up spending pretty much the whole day. And he was like, hey man, would you really help me correct these behaviors? And I'll just give you for instance on one of them because I want you to understand, but he had a really, and I didn't like hearing it because it hurt me, but he had a real habit of downing himself, right? Like truly it was just constantly, no, this, no, that. And even when when I say downing himself, most of it was in jest, but not all of it. And the fact of the matter is, even when it is in jest, if you're speaking it aloud and hearing yourself say it, you're reinforcing it. I don't care who you are. You can try to deny it. But if you're saying something out loud and you're hearing it, I mean, that's an exercise that you do that for the things that you want. Well, guess what? If you keep doing it and saying the things you don't want, the reality is it works the same way. It reinforces, right? So just on that one example, and that was one of the first things I talked about. I was like, hey man, may I tell you something? Because I love you. I think you're a really nice guy. And then I told him. Now, technically speaking, and maybe one of y'all will disagree. Hey, sweetie, technically speaking, I was judging him and saying to him, this is what you do, but I didn't come across it like that. At that point, I felt like, I don't want to say mentor, although I do have like 10 years on him. it was more of a out of friendship. I was trying to help him because I know he has been suffering from a lot of different things, including just being happy in life. And that, one of those things I immediately pointed out, was, hey, take a look at this. And he agreed. And needless to say, by the way, he's a much happier person now than when I met him. And what really, it's one of the things that, it's one of the things that I personally get a lot of great satisfaction these days. And it is when somebody texts me or calls me or posts and says, you saw something in me that nobody else did, and you believed in me when I didn't believe in me, and I am now a much better person. Thank you so much for being in my life. I cannot tell you how incredible that feels, in a world that is filled and fraught with pain all the time. You've got to look for the things that balance out the pain, and it's always balancing. Here's the difference. Because a lot of people say only bad shit happens to me, and a lot of people say only good shit. And you have lucky and unlucky, right? I have truly come to the place in my life where I do not believe in luck in that sense. What happens is somebody has, let's just take one side, positive, right? Somebody has a few good moments, a few positive moments, and they start to believe in their head, and they even reinforce it, that I am lucky and good things happen to me. Two things here. One, when the bad things happen, they don't see them as much because there's so many good things in their opinion, in their eyes that are happening. But if you get down and talk to anybody that talks about being lucky, they have all the same fucking problems as you do. They have all, I kid you not, I've had conversation after conversation with people that say I'm extremely lucky. And when we actually start to talk, they have had all the same issues and problems that anybody else has. The difference is, and here's what's really funny, you're going to love this. They have created more positive for them, but they still have the equal negative or the balancing that happens, right? But they've had a lot of really great things that in their eyes makes them lucky. Maybe they, and I'm not going to talk about stupid things like people, winning the lottery. I still don't believe that's luck. You had to go and buy the ticket, and you had to believe you could win. The people that buy the ticket and they don't believe they're ever going to win, never win. They don't. The people that buy the ticket on a log shop, but they believe, hey, I might win, those are the people that win. What you put out is what you get, folks. And what I mean by that is what you put out is what you end up getting mostly, right? So that person still has all these things that are going on in their life that balance out the lucky things they're getting, right? But they just don't see them as much. When you are happy and positive, the bad things don't mean as much. Even if you haven't come to the realization that it's going to balance out, you learn subconsciously that, hey, don't worry about it. It's going to be great. I'm lucky, right? That's their mindset. Now, take another person, right? And let's say they have a string of really bad things that happen, just like the good, the positive person. By the way, I want to come back, and I hope somebody will remember, but I'm not saying that every time something positive happens, immediately something negative and vice versa. What I'm saying is that positive thing and or negative thing, given enough time, and I have looked at this over, decades. I'm be 52 here soon, and I'm telling you, sometimes it takes 10, even more years to transpire. But whatever has happened will end up causing an opposite thing at some point down the line, right? And what I mean by cause is this thing in the future could not have happened if this thing now had never happened, right? Cause and effect. It's just that simple. So, oh shit, am I about to have a stoner moment? I'm about to have a stoner moment. What's up, Vital? Yes, you get what you put in, and people get what they deserve. You know, one of the things that happens, and that's where it was. Let's take the negative person. I got it right back. So they have a string of a few bad things that happen, and they start to believe that the world only shits on them. Right? That's all that they see is the world shits on them. Well, when it's happening is, and I can tell you this from personal experience on both sides of this, right? I've ridden the wave both ways. Just like if you're seeing more, if you're seeing the positive more, you ignore the negative. If you're seeing the negative more, you ignore the positive. I have sat with my son and myself, by the way, when I was younger, and still at times now. Don't think that this can't happen to me at, where I get into, I've been depressed. Depression is sitting on your ass. I'm not saying that it's not a disease. It is. It's caused by a lot of things. Mine is PTSD and the state of the world. And I'm not going to go into much more right now. I lost a son. That's why I'm depressed. But if you see something only that, then you ignore the others. And so I've had the conversation with my son, who the living twin of Sky, and he's like, nothing ever good happens to me, right? He says that, and that reinforces it. And then what I do, and he has started to see the world better, but what I do is go back and be like, hey man, tell me what all happened today. And he'll tell me, and I'll be like, I'll ask him a few questions and get it out. And I was like, so you've actually had like some really cool fucking things. Like, for instance, one day, everything happens, only horrible things happen to him. He just got a fucking raise with a promotion that day. Not to sound rude, but if you're only seeing negativity, then you will ignore even the most blatant positive things in your life. On the flip side, if you are only paying attention, or I should say, you only really truly pay attention to the positive, then you will ignore, and the negative stuff just kind of rolls off. But it does happen, and it is real. And I don't care how you come to the reality of it. Just, the older you get, the better it is, the easier it is to see, I should say. And let me give you an example. And I've talked about this before, but I want to make it quick for those who haven't heard. I sat down one night, and just every great thing that had ever happened to me, I just started going back in time, cause and effect, and seeing, how it got there, if you will. Just looking at it. I was having a very emotional night. My wife had just nearly been killed, and I believe that I was very, very close with God that night. That's all I'm going to say, right? In fact, I call it a night of miracles. One of them is this. But for every horrible thing that had ever happened in my life, right, I took it to the point where it was always something horrible, and every one of those were catalysts. Not just that they got balanced out, right, but that they literally they had to happen in order for this great thing to happen. One of the most blatant, and it hadn't even happened to me yet, but to give you a great example, my wife was hit by a car. She was nearly killed, but she wasn't. It was miraculous. I'm not going to go into that. It was, here's how miraculous it was. And anybody who knows statistics will get this. Car was doing 40, 45 miles an hour. She was hit, thrown in the air for about 20, 25 yards and hit the pavement. And that was on a Wednesday. And that woman was walking around watching football on Sunday, that Sunday. She was in a lot of pain, and she had a broken fibula. I'm not going to say that there wasn't pain. It did damage to her, but in comparison to what it should have done, it was practically nothing. People that get hit at 40, 45 miles an hour, the mortality rate is over 90%, number one. Number two, if they are of that 10% that lives, they're fucked up. We're talking broken necks, broken backs, broken hips, broken, is it in femur? Femur's the big fucking one, right? Things that change your life forever. She was changed. Hers was almost all mental. She suffered dual concussions from the windshield here and then the concrete here. And so she has a little bit of a short-term memory issue, but it's not like 50 first dates. She's worked, she has a job, she knows me, she remembers, and she remembers everything great up until the accident, like all these people that deal with it. And there's no rhyme or reason as to what she will forget and what she won't forget, but she will absolutely forget conversations. She will forget moments that she didn't used to, period. That's the only way I know to say it. Let's see what you got. Argue. I don't have my glasses that I meant to. Argue for your limitations, and sure enough, they're yours. If you say this doesn't happen to me or I can't do it, you'll convince yourself. Yes, I like another thing that I preach very, very hardcore. I love that, by the way, doll. One of the things I believe very much, and I preach it, rather than saying the negative that you are trying to accomplish. And what I mean by that is, let's just take an example, right? I'm not going to do cigarettes. That's like the only one that doesn't. It's like the only one that doesn't work. Or I shouldn't say, there's always, first of all, for every rule, there's always something that will break that rule. So nothing is 100% consistent down the line, except for live or born, live, die. That's the consistency. Okay. After that, nothing is consistent. Oh, and there goes the thought right out of the fucking head. Let me see this and maybe I'll get it back. Yes. So let's say you are trying to be less dominating. Okay. And this is a bad example, I can already tell. Fuck that. No, I'll go with that because it still works. It's going to be a little more convoluted and I don't know the word. But let's say you want to be less dominating, right? If you say, I want to be less dominating, there's two things that I believe you have to change in that, right? Number one, if you say, I want something, you will achieve exactly that. And this is based on the whole thing that Kira's talking about. If you say, I want this, it doesn't matter, put anything in there. I want this. What you will get is exactly that. You will get the want for it and never achieve it. And anybody who has, what's the word? Meditates or speaks to themselves and a way of motivating themselves, not necessarily talking out loud, but motivates themselves, tell themselves something, right? Will know this to be true, but what you speak and what you say is exactly what you'll get, and you will never get what it is you want. You will just get the want for it, right? So the first thing you have to do in that statement is change the word to I will. That, it sounds stupid and insignificant, but once you change it to I will, you get what you're trying to get. However, if you say I want to dominate less, I will dominate less. I will be less dominating, right? You will actually continue to still be a dominating person, probably at about the same level, right? However, if you say, I will allow more people to take the helm, right? And that's the best way I know how to say it. But I will be more cooperative with other people, that's what you're going to get. It's these stupid little things, but our brain is very in tune, and what we say is what we reinforce, and we get exactly what we put out there, whatever that is. You just have to be very specific, right? It's kind of like, I know this sounds ridiculous, but it's kind of like the whole genie, right? Like you got to be really careful what you wish for. You got to be specific. What is this? Yep. So thank you. You have to be specific. You have to say exactly what you will do to get what it's going to be. I'll give you a real quick example And I think I may have already told this story once before. So I'm going to say it really quick. I'm not going to say the long version. In a nutshell, I told my mom and my now wife, but she was at the time just my live-in girlfriend. But I told both of them, I was like, I will get my first $100,000 base salary job. Right? I'm a salesman, so and what I was looking to do was actually become a sales manager. I think I may have even said that, but I wasn't specific on that. I just said I will get my first $100,000 base salary sales job. Within 90 days, it was less than that. I think it was like 45. I kid you not. I got the offer. And here's what's really funny. I will say this because it blew me away. I was the first person this guy ever paid $100,000. His highest paid base salary manager in the company was getting $60,000 plus commission. That's all I'm going to say. You will things, you do, but you've got to say, I will, not I want, right? Just change that little one to that. Then be very specific and say exactly what you do want, but with the word will in front, right? I will. Oh shit. I'm trying to think of an example. There's nothing coming to mind. But you get my drift, right? I know you do. So it's kind of funny because the one thing I believe, if you talk about this, I mean, if we're talking about this and we're discussing, how to basically how to motivate yourself, and if you will, also to kind of help how to self-hypnotize, right? And when you're looking at like what I said tonight about judging, that is the one person that you should be judging. But you have to be reasonable, and that's yourself, right? You have to judge yourself because you have to have a moral. If you didn't judge yourself, then you have no moral compass and you're a sociopath, right? So unless you want to be a sociopath, and I know there's takers out there, you judge yourself. Me personally, I do have God, spiritually speaking, no formed religion. I do have God, and quite frankly, oh, hell's bells! I am dropping it tonight. Oh, for me, I judge myself, and God judges me. But if you understand how I believe, that's really one and the same. And doesn't mean I'm a God, so I don't want anybody to even get that egotistical. I believe that the same entity that is God, there is a small piece of that entity in every single one of us. Okay, that's just what I believe. I'm not going to get into any more of it, but the bottom line is, for me, only God and myself judge me that matters. I know there's more people judging me, but that's the only ones that matter. Now, as I pointed out earlier, if you're trying to help somebody and mentor somebody, then they are looking for your judgment so they can fix what they feel like is certain things, certain shortcomings, whatever you want to call them. But, even gifts, there's still certain gifts, in my opinion, that have been given to us that we don't want to keep, right? So to me, it's about finding that balance, because once you do this and you really look at it, right, coming back to the lucky and unlucky factor, once you do this, and to me, the more it happens, the more you kind of fall in the middle. You don't feel like you're extraordinarily lucky. You don't feel like you're extraordinarily unlucky. You start to realize that everything is going to come to volition, right? It does, however, make it a lot easier to ignore the negative and pay more attention to the positive. But it's not that there's less of either going on, right? And all these things, when you're talking about what's right or wrong, again, I think I've pretty much, hopefully I've gotten that across to you how I believe, or what I believe, if you will. It doesn't mean that there's things in you don't want to change, because for you, with your moral compass and code, you don't feel like they're no longer for you. And that's kind of how I start to look at things, rather than they're right or wrong. This is no longer for me. You know, I mean, for instance, on a physical one, I quit smoking recently, right? And I didn't say it because I said I will quit smoking. I said I will no longer smoke tobacco. Right? And I know some people argue, but there's only so many ways you can make something positive, but quit is definitely not a positive word. So I will quit smoking. I have said that before, and I didn't quit. So, you know, I changed the routine. That's another thing, by the way, just on a side note. All of us are insane to a certain degree, because all of us will do the same thing and expect a different result. And that is absolutely insane. If you want to change and you want something to change, you have to do it differently. You know, and one of the things that I will say is I've been watching a lot of people in my life, and who I love very much. And these are, so when I say this, yes, I'm judging them. And I know what we've talked about, but these are close family members who seek my knowledge as much as I seek their knowledge and experience, right? And I see this in them, and it's something that, you know, I suffer from. Well, then I see it. I don't always say it, but I do see it. And that is, you know, there's a lot of folks out there who are very scared of change. But what I've come to realize is change is the exact thing that you need to live. It's the exact thing that you need. Hey, Sam. Nice to see you. I like your picture. And what did this say? Same beliefs, brother. Yep. Love it, Vital. Hope you're having a wonderful new year, man. So, yeah, I lost my train, but I'll catch it here in a minute. I probably lose my train of thought more than, it's why I've got to start. I got to start writing again. I used to keep a journal, and I need to go back to it. But you know, nowadays it would be probably more beneficial, and I think most of the people that know me would prefer if I did like a online type blog, so people could read it. Oh, by the way, I wanted to show y'all something. So I got this for Christmas. I don't know how many of y'all love a nice throw blanket, but I got this, and I got it. Check that out. Isn't that badass? I got it with Sky's name, and I love it. It is so fucking soft. First of all, I love throws, and I love the shit they make it. Polyester sucked in the 70s and 80s, but they sure learned how to use it. It's so soft, but it's two different. So you got one side that's shiny, and it's still extremely soft, but then you have the inside. And I don't know if y'all have seen this one, but it's one of these that literally is two. This is a blanket, and this is a blanket, and they're sewn together to make this throw. So it's nice and thick and heavy, and it's personalized with my son's name on it, which I think is pretty fucking badass. So, in fact, I've got to wash it for the first time so that I can start to use it. Oops, what time is it? Okay. Change. Told you I'd get back to it. Without change, we're not learning. And when we stop learning, we truly stop living, and we're now we're closer on the road, no matter what age, we're closer on the road to dying because there's no real living going on. And I'm sure there's 50 million people that will argue with me. I know that's the truth. But there's also 50 million people that will agree with me because they've come to the realization that they understand. If they're learning something, they're changing. With every new piece of knowledge comes a degree of change. If it's simply nothing more than the fact that you now know this versus not knowing it, that's change, right? But more times than not, let's give an example like it's educational and you learn something. Well, now you will change a behavior to satisfy the knowledge that you have gained, you know? And that goes all the way back to just being a kid, right? Like, I mean, let's just take the first things. The first time you touch something hot eye, and it burns you, you had pain, you had change, and now you have the ability to prevent yourself from doing that. But change was required and learning happened. In fact, I'm almost to the point where, and I say this, they're synonymous with one another, because anytime something changes, doesn't matter what it is, please tell me, give me an example of how this isn't the truth. But anytime something changes, therein lies the fact that you will have to learn it differently. You will have to relearn that. Doesn't matter what it is. And anytime you learn anything, well, we already made that very clear. That is change. It's funny because they, you know, it's weird when I've gotten to this point, but they really are one without the other, but they're not the exact same thing, right? They are one that is a cause and effect, and either one happens or the other happens first, and then, you know, vice versa. So, and I have said this before, if you are not learning, then you are not living, right? By learning, you invoke new things, you cause change, and you get to do it differently, which means typically you should possibly even live better now, right? Or live what you consider to be a better life. That's how I see it. And let's fire this joint back up so that I can forget. You know what? Fuck that. I'm gonna change this up. And I've had my rig here, Ghost in a Jar. I call it Ghost in a Jar because it's Rick and Morty, and it actually has a picture of yeah, you can't see it. A picture, there it is. Picture of Ghost in a Jar right there. Man, what dabbage? Let's see. Oh, hell's bells if I did. Oh, this is JMG. No, JMO. Ultra refined sugar wax. One of the things I do when I get the sugar wax, though, me personally, is I go in and I like, you know how you fold metal and fold and knead dough? Basically do the same thing with my sugar wax, and then it becomes a lot easier to handle because it kind of goes back to almost to an exact, like a batter or a butter. That was sugar, and I know what y'all are used to seeing when you see sugar wax, but almost all of them you can do this, and some of them are a little too dry. There are a few, but the vast majority have enough moisture to do it, and then it's a lot easier on the dipstick, if you will. Change. Here's one. You know, I've been smoking marijuana since I was 14, right? And smoking marijuana doesn't resemble smoking marijuana when I was 14 in 1986 has zero resemblance to smoking marijuana in 2024. I'm telling you, there is like it's two completely different fucking worlds. The knowledge is different, the acceptance is different. I mean, it's crazy. Because I remember talking about change. I remember back when I was 16, actually, I was watching, I'd already been smoking for 2 years, and my mom knew I smoked. Go back and watch old episodes and you'll hear about all that. But I've been smoking with her since I was 14. So, yes, they did. Neither one of them resemble the other. And I was going to say something about it now that I did. I fucking brain farted that one right out of the world. I'll take a sip of coffee and let's see if it comes back that way. Oh. I tried. It's your fault. I can tell you that. Like, no, you, not you, sir. Not no you. Either way, to kind of bring it full circle and in summary of, if you will, Prejudice hurts me because here's what's funny about it, and I never really covered this. If you're prejudiced and if you're laying judgment on people, 9 times out of 10, the reason that you are doing that is because it is within you. We see our defects in other people much quicker than we see the other ones, and we end up pointing them out to people, when in reality we should be looking in the mirror going and pointing that finger at ourselves. Because I'm telling you, if you go back and try this, start paying attention to yourself. Like, really pay attention to yourself when you're like, oh God, he's doing that or she's doing that, right? She is feeling much better. But when you find yourself judging, really, you don't have to tell anybody, right? But just get gut level honest with yourself and look at it and go, oh shit, that's something I do. Because it really is, most of the time, what you're pointing out in somebody else is literally the very thing that you do yourself. And many times, this is why, I don't know if you'd ever heard this statement, but this is why this statement is true. The people that you argue with and fight with the most are the ones that you have the most to learn from. The reason that you fight and argue with them that much is because they are generally, near reflection of you. It's like my firstborn of the twins and the living one. He is like a spitting image of me, and he and I fight like cats and fucking dogs. I can't even tell you how much it is ridiculous. And what's funny is, at this point we don't fight. I am the father and he is the son. At this point, he just berates me for all these things. He will constantly tell me what I'm doing wrong and what I'm, how I need to do this and do that. And every single thing that kid says to me is something that he's doing himself. I mean, every single thing. And it's funny because I'm now at the point where I'm seeing him do that. Guess what? I told you he's like me. He's doing the same thing that I fucking did when I was his age with my father, except I got even nastier about it. And by the time I was 22, I just cut my mother and my father out of my life altogether. I literally told him to fuck off and don't call me. Threatened my father's life in the family. My half sisters and my stepmother threatened their lives. As a matter of fact, remember, I became a drug dealer. So what are you going to do? But I threatened their lives because I was so angry to get my father never to call me. Would I have harmed my family? Absolutely not. But I knew my father well enough to know that if I laid the threat down, the man wouldn't call me or write me or anything anymore. This is back in the time before people were, religiously using email. So texts, I should say text messaging on beepers had just kind of hit. Anybody remember that? Those were the first text messages. You would that's where it all started, as a matter of fact, was with a beeper. And that's just like now, was, well, like original text. It was 140 character. I'm pretty sure 140 character limit. The only difference is, believe this, you didn't actually type it. You would call the number that you would do, for a beeper, and a live operator would talk to you. So you would literally tell them what you wanted to say and they would type it out. So yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of sexting going on just yet. Put it that way. Although there was brave enough people that didn't give a fuck who they were talking to. Like, this is the message I want to send. So, but now those days are gone. We have Snapchat. So, pardon. In conclusion, I don't know what I want to say, even in conclusion. It hurts because most of the time, this is why it hurts so much to watch people being prejudiced and judging the world, and usually other people, is they're usually in a lot of pain. And right now, kind of where I was ultimately going with this, believe it or not, just took all show to get there. The world, even as an optimistic person, which I am, okay, I truly am, but at the same time, there's scales, right? And what is happening is, in the scales of people living in hate versus people living in love, and to me, it's just a simple differential. Okay, it doesn't mean that every single one that's living in hate is running around going, I hate this, I hate that. That's not what I'm saying. But if you're living in hate, then you live based on your fears and your worries and your dislikes and all that stuff. If you live based on love, then you live a completely different life. And I'm telling you, the scales of that are, unfortunately, right now, very, very unbalanced. The vast majority of people, and I say this is an opinion. Okay, I do not have factual information. So what I will say is, based on a conversation that I had earlier today, I'll say it like this: the vast majority of the people that I have met in this world, okay, vast majority, and I would say 85, maybe as high as even 87% of the people that I have met in this world do not love themselves. That's living on the side of hate, right? When you dislike yourself more than you love yourself, you see the world differently. You don't see it in the same light. And it goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of the show. It's how you perceive the world, right? Because you're either living in hate or you're living in love. But I truly have seen my experience now. I am just one person that has been walking around for a little over 50, or getting close to 52 years. And I've only met the people I've met, but I've met a lot. And, the ones that I don't know well enough, I'm not including them. Okay. Because I do sales, and there's times where I will talk to somebody on the phone for a very short time. I have met them, but I did not talk to them, long enough nor deep enough to know how they feel about themselves personally, because I was just trying to sell them marketing or advertising or whatever the case may be. I'm not counting that when I say that. That wouldn't be fair. Plus, it would be I can't really count them in the equation at all. They're like, they're not of it or part of it. They're removed, if you will. Yummy. But yeah, I was trying to remember where I was, but it hurts. It hurts to see the amount of people that hate themselves and are living in that hate versus the amount of people that now here's what's funny. Everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. When I say that, that number is starting to decrease because all the new people that I'm meeting, not all, I want to say the vast majority of the new people that I am attracting these days and meeting through Twitter and other social channels, YouTube, Twitch, the people that I'm meeting through those channels, many times you can tell that they are well adjusted, but I preach positivity and that. So it's not like somebody who's fucking pissed off at the world and angry is going to come in. It's going to be like-minded. That is a natural, no coincidence kind of thing, right? That the people, and I don't really also, I'm not counting the people that I have met in that equation. I was only looking at everybody I met up until I started doing this. The reason being is because doing this is kind of biased. I'm only really attracting a lot of positive people because of what I just said, right? So it's not really fair either to put them in the equation. What I was looking at is the people that I've met naturally and had deep conversations with, whether they were friends, family, or work, doesn't matter. The ones that I got close enough to know, the vast majority of them, as I said, 85% do not love themselves. And it doesn't take long to get to know that about somebody. It really doesn't. My buddy, one of the things that I was talking about earlier, one of the things that, we had conversation after conversation, ended up having to, this was after he asked me to help, but he's a frustrating dude. I ended up having to yell at him, but I'm like, dude, you do not love yourself. And here's proof of it. If you did, you wouldn't be doing A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And he was doing that many things. So there's a lot of telltale signs, and you can probably do this for yourself and be like, yep, it's I wouldn't say necessarily do this for yourself to judge them, but you could do this and kind of see, because again, look at what I'm saying, right? Like if you see this, I am literally judging them, but I don't. To me, judging is that you see it and then you bring it up and hold it against them. Okay. You can't help but to see features and traits of people. You just can't help. And you have your feeling about those types of traits and those type of actions, right? They give you a feeling. Judging is when you not only do all that, but then you say to them or say to someone else or put them down for it or hold that against them. That is judging. You are going to discern and decipher everybody's actions into a category of whether you agree, whether you disagree, or if you're so on it. That's just part of life. Okay. It's judging once you, like I say, hold it against them, or say it to them in like an angry way, like you do this, or say it behind their back, even worse, to somebody. Oh man, he's so da. So back to what I was saying, if you take a look at the people in your life truly, then you will come to your own view. I will say this, because I try to look at things, right? I'm 52 and I did not love myself for the vast majority of my life. So it is absolutely very possible, based on my beliefs of what we put out is what we get, and we attract the same basic energy as we are. It would only make sense that for the longest time, even though it wasn't social media and all that, it was still life, right? So if you're out and about and you're at a bar, then and you're talking, then you're probably going to attract someone that's more like you versus someone that's not. And if you are in that negative place, then guess what? It's why a lot of relationships. But here's another proof of it. And I know some people might say this is stupid, but to me, more proof is the fact that there's more divorces than there are, the divorce rate is much higher than the marriage rate. So, but I was an unhappy person, therefore, and did not like myself. Therefore, it is. And I try to look at it, so even though it is a high percentage, again, is it a true representation of the whole world? No, I do not believe it is. Now, and I'm talking about that number of 85%. That's of the people I've met. What I ultimately believe is that well more than half, okay, if I had to give it a number, I would say, now this is taking in account to the people that I've met and the media in general. And what I mean by media is news, movies, all these social networks, right? All these things you see it, not just these feeds, but you see what's being done and happening around the world. I again believe that more people, probably at least I would say 70% of the world, is not loving themselves the way that they need to. And if you want to look at it, I don't know how else to look at it myself, but percentage wise, if it's 50-50, that's not equal. If you're loving yourself 51%, then you're loving yourself just a little bit more than you hate yourself, and that's it. And that can continue to grow, when you let go of the things that are bad and you continue to praise yourself and love yourself for the good things you're doing, the good things in your eyes, in your opinion, in your world, what you believe to be good. It's funny because I really do try to practice what I preach. And I have so many friends from social networks and stuff that if we sat down and talked politics or religion, they would fucking hate me. Right? But what my whole thing is, that doesn't matter. I remember a time, I do remember this time. People act like this wasn't here, but it wasn't that long ago. For me and where I lived and the way that I interacted, it really didn't much matter what you believed religiously, what you believed politically, even the color of your skin. Now, there was still a lot of prejudice in regard to sexuality. I can't deny that. That was what I saw growing up more than anything. Where I grew up and the way I grew up, I was taught from the very beginning that no man is or woman is greater or worse for any reason. Any reason. We are all equal, period. That's what I was taught my whole life. So I remember a time when, didn't matter who I voted for. I could go play golf with this dude and it was a great time because we went out and played golf, right? Or we have the same views on life, like the things I'm talking about. Like, think about the things I talk about. They're not religion and they're not political. They're more, for lack of a better word, existential. That's probably the best word that I could give it. They're existential. They're, to me, again, this is an OPINION. To me, I spelled the word and then forgot what I was going to say. Isn't that just typical? That's shitty typical. Oh my effing. I wish, what I wish? I'm going to try to do this in the future. I bet there's something that I can do that does an auto transcript of me while I'm talking. Because I know that YouTube, if I go back and watch my videos, they're all subtitled, right? They do it automatically. What would be really cool is if I could look at that as I'm talking, because then I could easily remind myself, my dumbass. This funny thing, I wasn't hit by a car, but my memory isn't that much better than my wife's, because I will not deny I've been smoking this for so long. And I'm now at the age where the memory just naturally starts to leave. It's like, bye-bye. Things happen. I was just talking to my mother today about it. One of the things that I was trying to get through her is that, you can look at this one of two ways. It's either negatively or positively, right? And what we were talking about is ways of life that she's forced to give up because of getting old. Just period. Like, I'll give one example. I'm just trying to think. Okay. The easiest one. She was diagnosed with COPD. The woman was forced to quit smoking cigarettes or she was going to die. That's, and that's an extreme one, but still, she loved smoking her cigarettes. She absolutely loved her cigarettes, you know? So what we were talking about today is the fact that you can also, for instance, that's a great example because yes, she loves cigarettes, but they were killing her. They were she now, because of the years of smoking, and she is doing better, but she now fights a lot of chest pain and things that the smoking has done. She can't even enjoy smoking marijuana as much as she used to because of what the smoke has done, right? And she smokes the marijuana for medication, but it's almost to the point now where she uses kratom more for the pain, and then also uses the inhalers in order to to get some relief. But here's the thing. That being said, she's breathing better than she has in years, right? And now, right now, this very second is not a good example because she just got the flu back-to-back months, right? So right now her energy is really low. But before she got the flu, which we all did, her energy level, I can tell you because I was there when she quit smoking. Like within a month or two of quitting, she had more energy. There was and once she got over the angertude of what I call angertude of quitting, because it's an angry attitude that you have where you're just you're pissed off at the world, and it's only because you can't have that cigarette. But even now, she will say that she is ultimately happier, and I guarantee you, I don't believe in regret, and I hope that she doesn't either. I don't think she does. But we can still say, if I could go back and change something, it would be this. And I have I would say it's a 90% chance that if I asked her that, she would say yes. If I could go back and change smoking, I would have quit a much longer time ago, or maybe not even ever picked it up. I think the latter, because I ended up picking up cigarettes due to my mother. And some people may hear that in the wrong way and go, oh, just because she smoked, that doesn't mean that. No, actually, I have to tell a story real quick. I dipped tobacco before I smoked, and I moved in with my mother when I was 16. And I'm very transparent and very straightforward with my mom. So I told her that I dipped, but she was like, look, I don't care. And this is how she said it. She's like, I don't care what you do, but you can't dip inside, and you can't have dip here, and you cannot dip if you live with me. She's like, I can't do it. But she goes, but I can't tell you not to smoke because I'm a cigarette smoker. So in that sense, literally, she was an enabler, and I started smoking cigarettes. So, although kudos, mom, and everything happens for a reason. If I would have, part of the reason that she made me quit dipping was I already had ulcers lining my gums, and most likely, if I'd continued to do it the way I did, I might have lost a jaw and and this is much better. So every change that happens to us, it is up to you to look at it and find the positive. That even, man, horrible things happen to everybody, folks, and I mean that. He died. My wife was hit by a car. I won't begin to tell you some of the ridiculous things that have happened to me, but number one, I'm here. Number two, every single one of those things led to a greater day, and it was brought about because of change. So, start to try your best. Again, this is my opinion. Try your best to look at life and see any change as a positive and find the positive in it. It hurts what happened. I'm not going to deny that, right? But there's already something that happened immediately, and I don't even think that it's the end of it. There's been several things that have happened due to my son's passing, but one of the big ones is that there's now 2 young women who are basically around the same age as Sky, and they call me Pops, and they look at me like a father figure, and they love me like a father. They call us family. They call me family. And I now have 2, not 1, but 2 daughters that I never got, right? I had 4 kids. They were all boys. Always wanted a little girl. But I believe God was like, no, you don't need a little girl. I would have been to get these 2 young women that I know. If I, like, let's say that somehow I took over as their parent at 16, I would probably find myself in jail. And that's what I've always come to terms with, is that I was a real womanizer from 19 until about 26, 27. I had some really questionable views on sex and women and all that, partly because I was raised by a lesbian. So as much as I got from it positive, as much positive I got from that, and that, what I mean by that is insight into women. When I was younger, I was a little angry about it. So I literally did things in how you say, kind of in combat to it. So, it is what it is. My hope. Well, thank God my clock is off. I forgot to run it back, but let's see. I got to go ahead and wrap it up because my wife is going to be needing me to go pick her up here soon. So I'll just kind of bring it to a head. I know, rather abruptly, but does it really matter? I could do this all day and night, quite frankly. That's why I try to limit myself to just these 3 days. By the way, I apologize. I know I didn't stream Thursday or Saturday of last week. That was probably the height of my depression. So, and that concerns the lowest point of my depression. I was very unhappy. And if I talk about it, I might just sit here and bawl and cry right now. So I'm not going to do that. I have what I believe is turned the corner and started to move back in the correct direction, and I will continue to do so. What we got here? Love you too, sweetie. I'm getting ready to go too. No matter what, just think about this. If you're looking at somebody and judging them, look inward and see how it relates to you, number 1. Number 2, remember that what you're doing is exactly what you're supposed to do. Even when you make a mistake, you make that mistake to learn from it. You have any experience is for you to learn, whether it was good or bad. It's to learn from it and grow. You only learn and grow with change. So when things happen, look at them and go, what is the positive side to this? That's all that really I want you to get out of the whole night. Find a way to look at life no matter what, and look at it from the positive viewpoint and speak about what you will do in a positive manner, and start to watch how life will change for you. I have done this. This is purely my experience. This is not just, this might work. This is exactly what I've done, and I have taught it to other people, and they are doing it, and they are happier, period. I love each and one of you. All of you folks are extremely important. You're extremely special, and you're incredibly awesome. Anybody ever want to be on the show, just ask. You will always have the ability to come on. And if you want to have a smoke sesh, we'll do a smoke sesh. If you want to have a debate, we'll have a debate. Whatever you want to do, I'm down for it. I love all you guys. Have a beautiful week since we've kicked it off now. As long as everything works out the way it should, I will be back on Wednesday, and maybe I'll have a guest later on this week or this weekend. I love all you folks. Have a great evening. Peace.
I switch here, I'm a strange fuck. Consist on ain't something I could say well. Throw my change into the wishing for a change well. Wish your day is swell life for the next come. And when the next come, pretend that it's the best one. Like I ain't even gonna try and say that to the next one.